So welcome to you all. And as I explained before, Helena and I will start by just introducing the work that we do at Rights for Girls and the work that we do with the girls, and then talk a little bit about how we train women to be able to do that work. So my name is Kim, and I'm the founder director of Rights for Girls. I've been working with groups of girls for about 12 years now, I think. I used to say 10 years, but it's actually now it's gone beyond that. So well over 10 years. And it started just in my front room with a group of local girls. The mums came to me and said, look, you're forever talking about what preteen girls need. Can you just work with our girls? And at that time, I still had a baby in arms and two other small children who I was home educating. And I was like, no, I can't. But she kind of said, I'll do everything. I'll get the girls. I'll do everything that you need. I'll just, if you could do this. So I did it. And I'm still in touch with every single one of those girls. They're now all in their early 20s. They've been through uni. They're starting their careers. And they check in with me whenever something happens in their lives. I have the privilege of hearing about it because they know that I want to. They know that I'm interested, that I'm a woman in their lives who it matters to me what happens to them, and whether it be good news or more challenging things. And it's not that I'm massively in their lives lots, but they know that I'm there. And that's when Girls Journeying Together was born. Just to explain to you a little bit about what Girls Journeying Together group looks like, it's for girls who are in year 6 or in year 7. So they're either in the last year of primary school or the first year of secondary school if they're in the state school system. And so they're 10, 11, 12 years old. We support them making that transition over to big school. But also it coincides for many of them, for most of them, with the onset of puberty and the beginnings of the changes that come with adolescence. So Girls Journeying Together group is designed to support them through this really pivotal phase in their lives when they're changing really rapidly. And also what's around them is changing a lot as well. So what do? We meet monthly with them for a year, so they get to feel what monthly feels like. And in those sessions, each of those monthly sessions, we cover a range of things, a really wide range of things. It can be really practical, things that they need to know as they go into puberty, like what do the letters and numbers on a bra mean? Or what do you do about spots and greasy hair? How do you catch the blood? What if you start when you're at school? All of those really practical things that they need kind of information about. But then there's also the inside changes that they're experiencing. They become a lot more self-conscious around this age and more self-aware. Relationships, their friendships often are in a lot of flux. So how do you stay true to yourself, but also fit in with the crowd? How do you not lose your voice, as so many girls do as they go through adolescence? How do you even know what's important to you when there's so much pressure around you telling you how you should look and how you should be, not just from peers, but from social media, from the culture around us? How does a girl not lose herself as she goes through that phase in her life? Because the girls, when they arrive to us, when they're 9, 10 years old, they're often really feisty, full of themselves, got a strong sense of who they are, quite comfortable with that. Although I have to say that has been knocked quite a bit by the last few years of the pandemic for many girls, even at that young age. But nevertheless, we find that a lot of them have a sense of themselves which is lost over the next few years for many of them because of all the pressures on them to conform. And that's one of the things that we really offer them in Girls Journeying Together groups, is a place, a regular place where they can be themselves. And we really mean it. They belong just exactly as they are. They don't have to change anything about themselves to fit in. And for that to be real, it means that they have to accept each other just exactly as they are. I remember at the end of one of my girls' groups, I had a girl come up to me. She was autistic and she crossed her arms and she scowled at me and she said, I like girls I never thought I'd like. And I said to her, oh, okay, how's that? It's all right. And what we hope to do for all of the girls is to give them an experience that they probably don't have either anywhere else in their lives, or maybe not very many places in their lives, where they can just be who they are. And in that safe place can explore who they want to become. They can explore their hopes and their dreams, what's important to them. They can share some of the struggles and challenges that they're having. And at the end, we finish with a lovely ceremony celebration so that they get the experience of a good ending. But it's not the ending. It's just the ending of our first year together. We continue to support them right the way through their teens. We offer a group meeting once or twice a year. But actually, the girls that I know, because I mean, obviously I've been working with girls for years now, they still meet, but they meet independently now. You know, those that are, you know, they can jump on a bus themselves, they can coordinate themselves, they can even hire an Airbnb by themselves, and all decide to turn up in their prom dresses just because they didn't get enough wear out of them the first time around. So the relationship kind of extends beyond the actual group itself. And part of that is because the mothers also meet at the same time as the girls. So there's a mother's circle that is, in a sense, kind of encircles the group of the girls. Now, the mothers do come into the group a couple of times. They come for the very first session. That's the taster session, because whilst we depend on the mothers to bring their daughters, we absolutely make it the girl's choice as to whether or not she wants to join. And how can they know whether or not they want to join until they've actually had a taste of it, and they've met the facilitator, and they've met each other, and they've had a bit of a taste of what we do? So the mothers bring their daughters along to the first session. We invite the mothers back halfway through the year, and then we invite them in at the final session, the ceremony celebration session. But for all the other sessions, the mothers don't just drop and run. They organize their lives and their other commitments so that they can actually meet at the same time as their girls meet, because that coincides with a time when those of you who are mothers, and please know that we don't only want mothers to train as facilitators. Actually, women who aren't mothers themselves bring something very special to girls' lives, because you don't mother them. They've got a mother, they don't need another one. The mother's circle, they support each other, because those of you who are mothers would have experienced that natural informal support that we get as mothers when our children are little, because you have to stay and sit around and watch them while they're in the soft play or they're doing whatever the thing is. And so you're naturally chatting to other parents and sharing the challenges and also the joys of parenting through that stage. By the time you've got a child who's sort of in her pre-teens, quite often they can get places by themselves, and they certainly don't need you to stay there. And so that informal support often disappears. That kind of school gate support, particularly once they're in secondary school, drops away. And yet it's a time when the role of the parent is changing radically, because the girl is changing very rapidly at that time. So for the mothers to actually have that support from one another through that year and beyond, because they make friends for life, as well as the girls who say they make friends for life. And so the mothers, as well as giving each other support, you as the facilitator give them a few questions, which I've set, so don't worry, you don't have to make them up, that means that what the mothers are talking about dovetails with what you're doing as the facilitator with the girls. Because even when the girls are really close to their mums, they don't necessarily want to share with her straight away what you've done in girls group. And so that means that the mothers have been walking in a similar territory, so they're alert if the girl makes a comment or asks a particular question, because she too as a mother has been talking around the issues that her daughter will have been looking at that month. Pause for breath. Helena says I always talk too fast, and I do, but partly because I'm just so excited about this and so excited about, because of course the thing is we are growing and we need more facilitators. And don't even worry if there are facilitators near you. That's the best thing, actually, because then you can pass girls between you. You're doing it on a Saturday, someone else is doing it on a Sunday, different times, different dates. What we find is the more facilitators in an area, the more word of mouth gets around. But in terms of girls journeying together, I think that's all I want to say at the moment, other than we have just received lottery funding to really support this program. We're not yet able to really reveal what it's for, but other than to you to know that we have just received an enormous support, which is a big thumbs up and affirmation of what we're doing from the National Lottery. So I'm going to go on now to talk a little bit about how we train you to run Girls Journeying Together. do know, however, that there's at least one person here who's interested in our GirlsNet mentor training. So I'm just going to very lightly touch on that, because we didn't want to go online when we had the pandemic. What we were hearing from the girls is that they were saturated with online offerings. School was online, social life was online. They didn't want anything else online, thank you very much. But at the same time, in the girls we were working with, we were allowed to continue in person even through lockdown, because the value of our work was recognized. We just had to adapt it so it was all socially distanced. But what we were seeing in those girls, and what we've seen since, is a massive increase in mental health challenges in girls and boys, but particularly in girls. And we wanted to find a way of reaching particularly those girls who wouldn't even be able to get in the door of a Girls Journeying Together group. So we did, in the end, design an online program. It's much more focused. It's just 6 weeks long. It's once a week for 6 weeks, but it takes the girls on a journey where they resource themselves internally and within their communities to get through a time of challenge and crisis. It doesn't have to be pandemic, it can be any challenge and crisis. And the training for that is also online, and that's just a 6-month training. But we're here today predominantly to talk about the Girls Journeying Together Facilitator training. And because you're working with girls in person, you'll need to train in person. So the training is split into 2 years. And the fees that you'll find, it covers both those 2 years. So don't think it's just for the first year. The fees cover both 2 years. And in the first year, you have 3 9-day residentials with Helena and I. And in the second year, you actually run your first Girls Journeying Together group, really closely supported by us. Every time you run a Girls Journeying Together session, it's followed by a group teaching supervision. But let me just talk a little bit about the first year and the residentials. There are 3 threads to this, and these threads are similar in the GirlsNet mentor training as well. So the first thing is, it's so much easier for you to offer to the girls something that you have experienced yourself. So a really important thread of the training is that I will take you through each one of the Girls Journeying Together sessions in person as your preteen self. So don't get busy with how does that work. You will very quickly be able to identify as that preteen self. She probably brought you here today, actually, but you experience each of the Girls Journeying Together sessions as your preteen self. And I run the sessions just in exactly the same way as I would with girls who are actually 10 and 11 years old. Secondly, we then analyze what happened. We talk about, what was your experience? Why did we do that? What did that exercise give you? How was it to experience that and talk about that? Why did I say or do that? What would I do if this happened? So we meet then as adults and kind of go through everything you need to know in order to be able to run the session yourself. There's a training manual this thick, which gives you not only the timetable, but also what you need to do to prepare, what resources you need to gather. It's not heavy on resources though. It's mostly things you can find around the home, or single purchase things, like obviously you need to get pens and papers for the girl and felt tips and things, like flip chart paper, things like that. There's also all the emails that you send to the mothers each month, and the letters that you post to the girls. We don't communicate with the girls digitally at all, because at that age we're really still trying to keep them, we're not encouraging them online anyway. It's not that I think being online is a bad thing, but we don't communicate with them that way. We send them actual letters, and the scripts for those letters, you get those. So you get everything that you need in order to be able to run the Girls Journeying Together session yourself. And of course, in those residential sessions, you'll also have a chance to have a go at running the sessions before you're actually in front of the real girls. So that's 2 of the threads. You experience Girls Journeying Together as your preteen self, and then we look at, how did I do it? Why did I do it that way? How will you do it? And what will you need in order to be able to do it? And then the 3rd thread, which is really key, is what really matters above all is who you are doing it, who you are offering this to the girls. And that's where the women's work comes in. And that's Helena's role in the training. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Helena. But I know also you're going to start with your background, and I always miss that bit out. So really, really quickly, for those of you who don't know, I founded Rights for Girls. I'm also the author of this book, which hopefully you've come across, From Daughter to Woman. I studied psychology, child psychology and women's studies at Cambridge University many years ago, and then trained to be a counsellor for teenagers. And it was then actually that I really thought, no, we need to work preventatively. We don't need to wait until there's a problem. We need to actually work with the girls before the coping, the unhealthy coping mechanisms set in, and before they run into some of the problems. So my work, my whole adult life has really been about working preventatively with children. And that means starting with them young enough that you can actually both gain their trust, but also cover some of the topics that they will encounter again and again. And of course, when you meet them through their teens, you'll circle back round. And of course, the way that you cover them is different as they get older. Helena, I'm really going to stop talking now.
You're getting better and better at it, Kim. And I know it's not just the passion. It's also because, like what Kim started by saying, an hour and a half would fly by. So she's an expert at trying, like, to say a lot of things. And okay, I'm Helena. And I live in France, and at the moment I'm trying to survive. It is so hot here, it's unbelievable. So I'm melting at the moment, but I got lots of water with me. I can imagine listening to Kim without maybe knowing the work we do in Rights for Girls and the Girls Journeying Together and the Girls Net, that it can feel quite overwhelming, because it's a lot of stuff about mothers and manuals and tasks to do and stuff to do. So and it all makes sense once we actually get down to it. I also want to reassure you that the training, it is immaculately planned. I can't tell you how many times we've had, like now, because we've run the training several times, that the women have said to us, oh my God, you actually do know what you're doing. You're planning this stuff, aren't you? So yes, we are planning this stuff. It is seriously planned out. It's not just ad hoc that we're doing it. So my background is totally different from Kim's. I'm Danish of origin. I haven't lived in Denmark for many, many years. I did a lot of traveling. I did a lot of spiritual searching, political activism, a lot of having a great time just being young in a world that still made sense, and where you could still travel relatively safely and freely. I'm a psychotherapist of profession. I trained in London. I've been a psychotherapist in private practice for over 30 years now. And I trained in London while I was working as a social worker in London, in Camden, for families and children. And one of the things I learned from that job was that, my God, do we need more adults and more parents? And as part of my private life at the time, I was married, I was in a relationship, and of course the age of wanting to have children. And I actually decided, like my husband, he had 2 boys from his previous marriage. So I have had the experience of bringing up 2 boys who at the time were 10 and 11. They're now in their 40s, late 40s even. And but I personally did a big conscious choice to not have children this time around. I didn't need to have my own children. I really have a sense that the children of humanity, they are all of our children. And because I had the pleasure and the challenges, but the experience of being in a blended family, I didn't need to have my own children on top of that. I was really struck by to what extent how many children are getting lost in the world because we don't have men and women. We don't have mothers who are women before we become mothers. We don't have women who actually even understand what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a mother. We have a lot of men who, because we don't know, we as the carriers of life and the life bringers, we don't know how to honor and sacralize life, to have an ordinary sacred life that we have pride in ourselves. And ultimately, if the women don't find their way home, the guys get lost too. Not because we're responsible for them, but because we are basically the ones that have got the feet on the ground at the level of what really matters in life. So my professional life, my private life, there isn't a big difference between the two. I am who I am in whatever role I'm in. And but it has been decades now of working specifically with women. I've been in private practice in London with couples, individuals. I was co-founder of something called the Center for Gender Psychology, nothing to do with transgender stuff. It's gender psychology was about the simple question of actually, very simple question, what does it actually mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a man? And the question that Kim and I could ask you, like that very simple question of like, when did you know you became a woman? How many of you could answer that question? And like we have asked that when we have been in person with people. And of course, a lot of women will say, well, it was when I gave birth, I knew I was a woman, because that was such that it is an enormous part of being a woman, the miracle of being able to conceive, hold, nourish, have another living being underneath your heartbeat, 2 heartbeats in your body, and then give birth to that miraculous new unknown being that is completely dependent on you. But that counts me out. That means I'm immediately not a real woman, and I would argue that. So there's a whole different issue about what actually comes in with what does it mean to be a woman, what does it mean to be a man, which of course we don't have the answers to, because it is as unique as the individual is. What I was busy with my now ex-husband in the gender psychology, Center for Gender Psychology, was really getting men and women together to let go of some of the stereotypical stuff about what it means to be men and women, but still be at ease in your body with who you are. We also co-founded something called the Co-Creative Couple Work, because we were both psychotherapists, and we were working specifically getting busy with what happens when people try to live together and have a family, and how come that love that starts off so wonderful and with fantastic intentions to do it all differently from how our parents did it, and a few years and months even down the line, there we are doing exactly the same bloody mistakes, having the same stupid arguments, as disappointed and as completely disillusioned about love, and wondering what the hell am I doing with this other person who seems to be the opposite of what I got attracted to in the beginning. And so we spent a lot of time normalizing all of that, and actually also finding out the sanity behind all of that. If you really do understand more about what it is that we are not just human beings who are born into a family, we're not just human beings who are born into a gender, we're also, let me say straight as I think it, we are souls on a journey, and we are evolutionary human beings that are learning and evolving all the time. And so there is sanity in the madness when we cause into trouble, because it forces us to question who we believe ourselves to be, question our own concept about what we think love is, what it is a man is and a woman is, what family is, what the purpose of life is. I'm also, since 2013, head of education for something called sexual grounding therapy, which I'm a senior practitioner of for over 20 years, which has nothing to do with Tantra. It has all to do with understanding what is it like to be born as a sexual human being, a sexual relational human being, with 2 power centers in your body, our genitals and our heart. And so how do we manage sex and love together? And then that's before we even start to get into relationship, even with ourselves. And what do we need from our parents as we go through life at all the different levels, from the Oedipal phase around 4 years old, all the way till we die, to who we are and how we die beautifully and meaningfully. So that's a whole different ballgame. Back in 1992, I started running groups for women called Ways of Women. Started off as a weekend, then it became 3 weekends, and it is now a year-long program over 3 weeks. And that's where I fit in with meeting up with Kim and Rights for Girls. Because back in 17, sometime like, was it 17? Yeah, I think Kim, 16 to 17, 2016 to 17, excuse me. Kim contacted me, a mutual colleague had referred her to me because she was looking for some supervision for the work she was doing with the girls. And this mutual colleague of ours knew I was deeply steeped into the working with women and all these issues. And so Kim contacted me. We arranged to have a meeting on the phone just to see if I was the right person for her. And it's like, I remember it like yesterday, Kim. It's like she talked as fast as she does now, but as eloquently and as precisely as she still does. And in 10 minutes, she tried to explain to me what she was been doing with Rights for Girls and whatever. And I had never experienced anybody who had a depth of understanding of what girls need at that pivotal transitional stage from the book that came later, from daughter to woman, from being a child into that no man's, no woman land, where you could so easily get lost before you come out the other side with some identity, some sense of yourself, the guidance that is needed to not lose your voice, to not lose your sense of self, to like, especially now, not to get lost into social media, all the image makers, the different conflicting messages we're getting. So I stopped Kim 10 minutes into her conversation and I said, Kim, you do not need supervision. You need to start training women to do what you're doing, because even then she had a waiting list up to 2025. Women like girls and mothers coming down from Scotland, up from Cornwall, sisters wanting to do what their bigger sister had just done. And Kim was the only one in the country, if not in the world, doing this work. So Kim said to me, but I don't know how to do that. And I said, well, that's interesting, because I train professionals. That's what I've done for a long time. I've been a faculty members, training psychotherapists, training supervisors, I'm training group workers, I'm running workshops. I do professional trainings. And so we said, let's meet. We did. We met on the heath not long after. We went for a long walk, mainly talk. We could both talk a lot when we come down to it. 6 hours later, we shook hands and agreed that we could work together, because what Kim was doing and what I was doing was completely dovetailing into one another. What I often experienced when I was working with women was that, of course, I wish I had had this information when I was younger. And this is what Rights for Girls is putting in place. Also, what I hear so often from women is, I wish that I had female role models that I could identify with, that I could really aspire to become like. Not that they were out of reach, but ordinary women that I could really see myself becoming, that I could understand in their life. Not any of these kind of influencers or whoever they're called these days online, the elites and the ones who are famous because they're famous for being famous, which I think is a miracle. They managed to make so much money from that, but they do. And they managed to do that because there is such a gap. There is such a longing to actually see something that is authentic and real and genuine from the younger girls. And if they don't find it, of course they get very vulnerable to go on social media. They get very vulnerable to believe anything they're told. And then they get very vulnerable to also start competing with one another rather than become a resource of strength for one another. And that also dovetailed with what I experienced again and again with women coming together in groups. We had to overcome this thing about, you get a group of women together in a room, and whether you admit it or not, maybe it's a little bit more difficult to do when we're meeting online like this, but if we were meeting in real life, I can guarantee you for a weekend, I can guarantee you within the first 10, 20 minutes of us being together, you would have all scanned the room unconsciously and thought, I like her, I don't like her, I will get on with her, not her, she likes me, she doesn't like me. That's why you're talking and chatting as if everything is okay. Yeah, you recognize it. Let's just be honest. We all do it. Yeah, let's just be honest. So there is a level that we have been trained rather than to expect stepping into a room of women and saying, wow, here's a group of my peers, here's a group of allies, here's a group of sisters. We have been taught, even without knowing it, to see each other as competitors, as kind of like, I have to be on the right side or the wrong side or whatever. I don't want to be part of that because then I'll be, and that is not our natural nature as women. It is because our ground of understanding our true skills, our true qualities, our true worth has been so eroded for more generations than any of us can even imagine. Yeah. So one of the things that Rights for Girls are putting in place, and this is of course coming in with that the mothers are part of it, like they're underage, so of course the mothers have to be part of it, but also a mother in a world that was healthy and balanced and real would be the first role model for a daughter. And it would be the woman who would give her daughter a sense of pride in, I'm going to grow up and become like mother. Now, I haven't met many women, myself included, who actually had that in my world. Like, I love my mother. She's dead. She died in 2016. And before she died, long before she died, we really had a proper good woman-to-woman relationship. But it took some work to get there. And when I was from both sides, okay. And when I was growing up, like, my mother was a generation that she was caught in the tradition of, like, you had to be a superwoman, you had to be the ideal lover, ideal mother, ideal housekeeper, and a career woman, and look great and always be available and never be tired. And she managed pretty good. She was not bad. She was pretty good at it. But at the same time, like, now I have to be honest here, my mother actually did a pretty good job, even because she could take the conflicts of the confrontations, she could take the stuff. And one thing that I am deeply grateful to, I knew my mother was a sexual woman. And I didn't know how rare that was until much later in my life. And it wasn't stuffed in my face. It wasn't that she was running around and doing anything in front of me, anything. It was the way she was conducting her life, the way she was with her, like, my parents divorced, but she had a really strong partner later on in her life, and the way she was with him. And it was no doubt my mother was a sexual woman. So I know what it means to be a sexual mother. And the sexual mother is so often missing from the role models. Like, we forget that we are women first and mothers next. And when the girls get to the age of 10, 11, 12, 13, they don't need just mothering from us. They also need to know that we are women with our passions, with our powers, with our dreams, with our hopes, with our qualities, with our fun parts, our wild sides. They need to know us as women more than they need to know us as mothers. If they only know us as mothers, then they often get the message, well, that's not very fun, is it? I'd much rather be like the guys. And then we start off creating this father's daughters, which is that we start as women looking for our identity as women in the masculine, with the fathers, with the men. No man can ever give a woman her sense of identity. No woman can ever give a man his sense of identity. We have to get it from our own biological genders. Yeah. And that role model is missing. And that is the role models that is my job to turn you into during a mere 3-9 days residential times. And so far we're not doing bad on that one.
I was just going to say,
actually managed to do it.
does it. Helena does it. Women come out of our training,
yes,
as the woman that they would have liked to have had in their lives when they were 11. So not a clone of me or a clone of Helena, still completely authentically themselves, but the kind of woman they needed in their lives when they were a preteen, because that's who you will become for all of the girls you'll be working with, including your own, the children that are in your life, whether they're your own children or other children that are precious to you.
And we don't do it. I don't do it by, I don't have of course I can't tell you this is the kind of woman you are. I don't need to. What I'm good at is to help you unlearn what you have learned and start to trust yourself. So it's more revealing of yourself to yourself. And I'm good at making the conditions right for you to reveal to yourself who you are. So you can actually thrive and unfold and finally come back to stand and face yourself as who you always knew yourself to be. But we're afraid to because of losing relationships, not being popular, being too much. That's often a thing that we are scared of as women. You're too much. Some of it probably goes back long time collectively, that when women did have their power and spoke up, some got pretty hot, burnt up and stuff like that. We got in the collective unconscious, and in real life, it's only about 700 years ago. That's not many generations that the witches were burned. So speaking up with your power, knowing what you know, and actually trusting in yourself is something that is deep in the female unconscious that is not safe to do. Learn to hide yourself. I got good news. That is changing now. We need to do the opposite. And that includes our vulnerability. It includes our complete and also sometimes not knowing what to do, feeling powerless, but we do it together and we support each other. And so in Rights for Girls, one of the things we're doing, we are providing the forum for the mothers to support each other as women. Because as Kim will say, as a facilitator, you never come between a daughter and a mother. It is not what we do as facilitators. It's not what you do as facilitators. We support the mothers and the daughters to find the connection, the best possible connection that they can have in their unique relationship. That may or may not fit our ideal, but it is ideal in their situation. And that's what we're aiming for. We're also aiming to one girl at a time, one mother at a time, to put the circles of support back where they belong. Yeah, that we actually have the children at the center, children's fire at the center. Nothing must be done to harm the children, the mothers, the grandmothers, the ancestors around it. And out of that strength, we have the strength to also support the masculine to do the same for them and to celebrate when they do it. Not to take on the job and try to rescue the guys. We can't do it. It's not our job to do it, but to learn to appreciate and see them for who they are in their differences, so that they can become proud and to find their own true masculine also. Without us doing it, they can't. First sacred law, everything is born of woman. We as women are the first one to break that one. I can't tell you how much misogynism I have met in women. I have worked a lot with men over the decades. The men is not the worst. I have met women who don't love themselves, women who don't appreciate the feminine, women who don't recognize the true beauty and qualities of being women, in the strength, in the vulnerability, in the nurturing, in the passion, above and beyond any of the stereotypical crap we've been told what it means to be any of the genders. But us as women, we have been trained to be misogynistic. And we need to stop that. We need to learn to come back and learn to honor and value ourselves as women. And so that we can become the role models that our girls need desperately, more now than ever. Yeah. So working with me, I promise you, you'll be turned inside out, upside down, and twirled around a little bit. But while you're doing that and wiping your tears, you also don't know whether you should be crying and you're doing it supportively, and we're doing it in a sacred manner and in a very ordinary and down-to-earth manner. And we're doing it in a way that is deeply, deeply feminine. in circles with each other, and you will find we are not as different as we might imagine. We are mirrors to one another. And the more you become powerful, the more other women dare to stand up and be powerful. So my vision for the women's work is that I want to see women in circles standing, showing their shield with your unique painting that shows your journey and who you are and how you've come to become the beautiful, unique woman that you are, and putting your spear in the ground, owning your power. And every time a woman does that and stand up in a circle, you empower another woman to do the same in your uniqueness, in your differences. And that is very attractive to the young girls when they see women like that. And they haven't had it for far too long. It's time that we get together and bring our girls back home. So, enough. I think that's the half an hour, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a bit over the half an hour.
Thank you, Helena.